Crypto's so much fun. I mean, it's not stressful at all. I'm 23 years old and I'm doing just fine. No, just to be transparent with you, I've always shown you my wins, but I do want to show you my losses as well, because this past week on paper, I've lost something like $100,000 because my portfolio at the peak was worth roughly $800,000 and now I'm back down. I mean, luckily this doesn't faze me because I've become exceedingly efficient at losing money, but I want to know exactly what is going on in the markets. But one word, Tether. Kevin! Now remember Home Alone? It's got a lot more to do with it than just Tether, but that's what we're gonna talk about. So before we get into the video, first, a message from our sponsors. I'm just kidding, I'm still not sponsored, but I'm still gonna make you watch stupid card tricks, so let's begin. Bitcoin, one of the few currencies where you can go from having 10,000 pennies down to 100 pennies, down to 1 penny in a matter of 20 seconds. Let's begin. Hi, my name is Andrei Jikh. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the Papa Smurf t-shirt and the blue watch, which is not an astronomia. So let's talk about the crypto markets and what happened, because this week we lost something like 20%, which is huge for the very many people that are new to the crypto sphere that just started investing this year, which is a lot of people. Everyone is freaking out like, what is going on? The sky is falling. So hopefully if you watch this video all the way through till the end, you'll understand exactly what's going on and where we're going. And trust me when I say, I know what it's like to lose over $100,000 in a span of just a few days. It is terrifying. So one of the reasons why the crypto sphere is falling so hard is because Elon sent out a tweet, and so he's doing what he does best. So I'll show you what he said and then we'll break it down. Having some Bitcoin, which is simply a less dumb form of liquidity than cash, is adventurous enough for an S&P 500 company. But to be clear, I'm not an investor, I'm an engineer. I don't even own any publicly traded stocks besides Tesla. However, when fiat has a negative real interest, only a fool wouldn't look elsewhere. Bitcoin is almost as BS as fiat money. The key word, almost. So let's break down what that means, because apparently Elon thinks that Bitcoin is BS and holding cash is trash. You shouldn't be doing that either. So basically, the billions of dollars that Tesla has in cash reserves is losing money to inflation, and that is millions of dollars per year that he's not getting back for himself. So he wants to park that money that gives him some liquidity and some fluidity to basically move that money somewhere else really quickly and have access to it. But the more interesting thing that he said that I really want to analyze is that he said he's not an investor. If anything, it seems like he's more of a speculator that hasn't quite grasped or fully understood or agreed with the premise of what Bitcoin is. Okay, so Elon is a brilliant guy. So he must know that that $1.5 billion could have been used to buy a dividend blue chip stable company that pays him an interest rate above inflation, which could have arguably given him an equal amount of liquidity. Or he could have used that money to reinvest it back into Tesla or even buy back more Tesla shares, giving him an equal amount of liquidity. But he decided to still buy a speculative asset like Bitcoin. And he didn't use that money to buy Dogecoin, even though he's been pumping it for the last few months. So clearly it's not as BS as he tells us. It's almost like he's telling us one thing publicly, but that's in complete the opposite direction of what he's actually doing behind the scenes. And here's what I think is really going on. It's really one of two reasons. The first is that he's figured out that his words carry a lot of weight. So if it's a matter of simply saying a joke on Twitter or adding some symbol on his Twitter profile page that's gonna either decline or boost the price of an asset, how easy is it to crash something, buy in at a cheaper price, and then voila, you made some money? I don't think that's really what's going on. I think the real reason is because of this. And I've seen this happen over and over since 2014, which I know is not a long time to be in crypto, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I know everything, but I've seen this story told again and again. And I think this is gonna happen to Elon. So the longer people hold on to Bitcoin, as soon as they buy it, they start to pay attention to all the other facets of the world as far as government, monetary and fiscal policy, and they start to understand how the governments are printing money and controlling it, and then Bitcoin makes a lot more sense as far as what it's trying to solve. Now, I know that Elon is one of, if not the smartest people on earth, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you
he just doesn't get Bitcoin.
I'm sure he understands those things, but by his own admission. He says that he's not an investor, he's an engineer. So perhaps there are aspects of Bitcoin, whether that's technologically or game theory, that he's missing about it. And who knows what it is? Maybe it could be the wastefulness of Bitcoin. Maybe it's the scaling problem with the fact that Bitcoin is only using something like 2 transactions per second, and that's not nearly enough if we're gonna accommodate the rest of the world. Or in my opinion, something that I'm still trying to figure out that I don't know the answer to, which is the fact that Bitcoin is horribly distributed from top down, meaning most of the people that own Bitcoin are the wealthiest 1%. And what problem are you really solving if you're giving this asset to the wealthiest people of the world? Not much. So we have to find a way to distribute it in a more effective way. And that's really something I'm trying to find the answer to. But whatever Elon's hang up is, there's still something that he's trying to figure out. But I think he will figure it out. And at that point, it would make more sense. But then the next thing that happens, I think, is even more interesting. A guy by the name Peter Schiff actually quotes Elon on Twitter saying, "Look, even Elon thinks that Bitcoin is as BS as fiat money." And that was such a strategically well-played move by Peter. You have to give him credit, because Peter is the chairman of Schiff Gold. So he makes his money by selling people digital gold as investments that they can roll over into their retirement accounts, their Roths, their 401ks, whatever IRAs, their taxable brokerage accounts. So he has every incentive under the sun to sell you digital gold. So Elon then responds to Peter with something pretty interesting. So he says, "An email saying that you have gold is not the same as having gold. You might as well have crypto. Money is just data that allows us to avoid the inconvenience of barter. That data, like all data, is subject to latency and error. The system will evolve to that which minimizes both." It's a really interesting response by Elon there. It's almost like he's making fun of Peter's investment thesis, saying, look, if you don't own physical gold, that's literally no different than owning something like a Bitcoin. Like, you have no room to criticize digital assets, because one of the strengths of gold is the fact that it's tangible, it's real, I could see it, I could touch it, it cannot be taken away from me. The IRS has entered the chat. But that's one of the strengths of gold. But most people don't own the physical element, they own the digital equivalent, which is literally no different than Bitcoin. He goes on to say that all currency is just a token that represents value, so that we don't have to exchange physical goods, aka bartering, which is just a pain in the butt. And then he goes on to say that money will eventually evolve into something that is more frictionless, in that it will reduce our wait time and the costs associated with using those currencies. But then the thing that he says that really drops the price is the next part, which is, that said, BTC and ETH do seem high. So well played, Peter. I'm gonna let you finish, but Elon Musk had the most expensive tweet of all time. Lol. Look, I don't think that Elon truly believes that Bitcoin is as BS as fiat money. He's just getting more comfortable with it, and he's still using his Twitter just for fun. Kind of like when I go to a party with my friend Tyus, who believes some really controversial ideas. And sometimes I'll be like, hey Tyus, tell us why you don't think we have free will. And it's like dropping some chaos into the middle of the party. It's a lot of fun. So I imagine Elon is using his Twitter exactly like that. Plus, it also cost him something like $15 billion, dropping him to become the second richest person on Earth. So I created a GoFundMe campaign for him so we can make him the richest man again. I don't think we'll get any donations. The limit is $1 million because I couldn't make it in the billions, so we'll be a little bit short. I don't think we'll get anything, but if we do, I will donate it to a charity of his choice, which is honestly just my desperate attempt to get him to notice our channel so he can come on and talk to us about literally anything. But really, one of the biggest reasons why Bitcoin's price dropped this week is because of the US government. More specifically, somebody by the name of Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen is the US Treasury Secretary, who is also the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, or the central banks. She basically advises the president on economic problems, but anytime she speaks about the economy, people listen, because her opinion carries with it a lot of weight. And unfortunately for us, she is not a huge fan of Bitcoin. So she recently came on and said some negative things about Bitcoin that obviously did not help us out. One of her problems with Bitcoin is that she says that it's mostly used for illicit activities instead of legal ones, which is actually demonstrably false, because the Bitcoin ecosystem has grown so much. We've got business integration, we've got brokerages using them, so most of the transactions are legal. This is not 2011 like when Silk Road was around, but if this was 2011, then she might be right. But either way, even if she was right, then I guess we should stop using dollars too, because those are really legit. But another problem that she has with Bitcoin is that she says it's not efficient. And to that point, I do agree with her. It's nowhere near as efficient as pressing a button and the money printer go prrrr. You can't do that with Bitcoin, so she's right. It's nowhere near as efficient. I do know what she means. She means it's not as efficient in terms of energy consumption to create a Bitcoin. It's just wasted energy. And that's actually false too, because most of Bitcoin's energy is coming from renewable resources. But fair point, the jury is still out on that one, and I guess we'll wait and see. But her biggest problem is really just to warn people to be careful and to be aware of what they're buying. And on that point, I do have to agree with her. People should know what they're getting themselves into, but at the same time, my whole thing is, I don't understand why she would bring up these arguments again. This is not the first time she said these things and these critiques, and we've known about these problems with Bitcoin for many, many years, most of which have been ironed out. So either she's not keeping up with the technology, which is okay, but then maybe don't make a comment about it, or two, she knows exactly what she's doing, and since we know that Bitcoin is going to compete with the dollar at some point, that's not very good for central banks. Either way, it doesn't make any sense to me why she's bringing this up again now, but if I was a new investor in crypto and I saw that on TV, I might get scared enough to make a run for the exits and sell off, which is partially why we did have another sell-off. But despite all the negative news in the market, I think there's one huge catalyst that people didn't talk about that I think is going to send Bitcoin to the moon, and that is clarity on Tether. Finally, we are seeing the end of the Tether saga, and this is huge. So if you remember, Tether was the stablecoin that was responsible for the huge run-up of Bitcoin in 2017. Now, the reason that we created Tether was so that we didn't have to wait 2 to 3 days after selling Bitcoin for the dollar to settle into our accounts. This way, we had access to USDT, which was Tether, that we can convert our Bitcoin into Tether and then move this money instantaneously. The catch, obviously, was that these tethers were backed by some monetary reserve, in this case the dollar. So for every 1 tether, we had the backing of $1. And that's what was supposed to be at the opposite end of that. The problem, though, was that for years, Tether denied any investigations into how it was creating these tethers. And so for the longest time, this whole Tether scandal was sort of like this shadow that was cast over the entire crypto community because people were afraid, how are these tethers created? Are people just creating them infinitely and then using them to buy Bitcoin with, and that's why Bitcoin is going up in price? And if we ever found out that that's exactly what was going on, that would unravel the entirety of Bitcoin and that would crash the price. So here's what happened. The New York Attorney General has said that Tether was not fully backed 100% of the time. And so Bitfinex, which is a huge brokerage, along with Tether, are now banned from trading in New York. So Bitfinex and Tether actually responded saying that they accept no wrongdoing and they didn't do anything wrong, and it was just an issue of disclosure and transparency that they could have done better. But they were still fined $18.5 million. So when you see headlines that say, New York bans Tether and Bitfinex over false statements about dollar backing and losses, it makes it sound especially scary, especially to new investors, which again is another reason why the price dropped substantially. But the truth is that if they had really found anything substantial, those fines would not be $18.5 million, which is a drop in the bucket. Instead, they would be in the billions of dollars. If anything, this small fee just tells me that they didn't find anything and they were like, hey guys, how do we get them? Yeah, they just weren't transparent with their balance sheet. Let's slap them with a fine and ban them. But the good news is that this should give investors confidence to use Tether once again, because it's not quite as sketchy as we originally thought. So what does it all mean for the price going forward? Let's tie everything together and make sense of it. Between 2016 and 2018, we have had multiple 30 to 40% pullbacks before seeing triple-digit increases. And this is healthy, this is totally normal, this is what Bitcoin does. And fundamentally speaking, Bitcoin is still Bitcoin, which is hilarious because these cycles repeat themselves over and over and people still don't learn. We have somebody famous or really wealthy enter the crypto sphere, they talk about it, the price pumps, people buy it, and then somebody from the government steps in and is like, no, don't buy it, it's a scam. And then people are like, it's a scam, I should exit, and then they sell off, and the cycle repeats itself over and over again, which is why I say Bitcoin will continue to crash upwards. So fundamentally, nothing has changed, but smart money still continues to buy the dip, which is why we had Square buy something like $170 million worth of Bitcoin, which represents roughly 5% of their cash reserves. So fundamentally, nothing has changed. It's business as usual. Don't forget to grab up to $250 worth of free Bitcoin using this BlockFi link right here, blockfi.com/Andrei. And if you'd like to get 2 free stocks, go deposit $100 with Webull and you'll get 2 free stocks, both of which can be valued up to $1,850 each. And if you want to track those stocks, my spreadsheet is available down below in my Patreon. Love you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you back here on Monday and Friday, sometimes Wednesday. And don't forget to go and subscribe to our Millennial Money channel, which is a podcast that's with Meet Kevin, Graham Stephan, Jeremy from Financial Education, and myself. We post every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.